All right, guys, we're going to continue on with Unit 4, Chapter 5, and we're now on to Lesson 6. Last lesson, Mr. Neugebauer talked to you about the Pythagorean theorem and how to use it, or how to figure it. Well, today we're going to actually be using it in some problems. So let's look at our first problem. Well, it's talking about parasailing, so here's the image of a parasailer, okay? And it says, what type of triangle is formed in the horizontal distance, so from here to here, the vertical height from here to here, and the tow rope, which the tow rope is what extends from the boat up to the parasailer. Well, the answer is, hopefully you can see that from here, that this forms a 90-degree angle, and so the type of triangle is a right triangle. Okay, it forms a right triangle. And I could further prove that by doing the Pythagorean theorem. If this is my leg A and this is leg B of the triangle, does it in fact equal the square root of C? And the answer is yes. Because if I have 72 squared, and remember the Pythagorean theorem says A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So if I have my leg A squared, I have 72 is what goes in for A, because that's how long A is. B is my other leg that makes the right angle, so it's 21. And I need to know, does that equal C, in this case 75 squared? Well, let's figure that out. 72 squared, if I were to square that, and just so you know on your calculator, the squared sign is this one right here. It's going to be whatever number. X is an unknown, so it's whatever number, and then it has the power of 2. So 72 squared is 5,184. 5,184. 21 squared is 441. And 75 squared is 5,625. And now I just have to add these to see if it is a true statement. Does this plus this equal this? Well, 5,184 plus 441 does equal 5,625. So that further proves that this is in fact a right triangle, because if they did not equal each other, then it could not be a right triangle, but because they equal each other, it is in fact a right triangle. Now it says, suppose the wind picks up and the parasailer rises 50 feet. So he's going up 50 feet more, okay? And remains 72 feet behind, so that doesn't change. He's still at 72 feet behind the boat. And then it says, write an equation. So what I don't know, so I know that this is 50 feet up, so he's no longer at 75 feet. He is now at 50 feet. This is now 50. This is still 72. What I don't know is what this is right here. Okay? But I can write that if I know, let's redo this a little bit. I'm sorry, this is 50 feet. I'm sorry. I'm telling you wrong. This is 50 feet. So if I go from 21 up to 50, I need to find my new equation. Well, I still do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay. My A is still 72, so I have 72 squared. My B went from 21 feet to 50 feet because he went 50 feet higher. So my B is now 50, and I don't know what my new C is. I don't know how far behind the boat he is, the change from the tow rope. I don't know how much more tow rope had to be let out to rise 50 feet. Okay? But now I can solve for that. 72 squared, again, is 5,184. 50 squared is 2,500. And if I add those together, 5,184 plus 2,500, I get 7,684. Now, that is C squared. So that is not my final answer. This tow rope doesn't go out 7,000 feet. That's over almost 2 miles, almost 3 miles. This tow rope doesn't go out 3 miles. But it is C squared, so I have to unsquare that. And in order to unsquare it, I have to take the square root. Square root unsquares numbers. So when I take the square root of 7,684, I now know that my tow rope, it says round to the nearest foot. Here is what I have. It wants the nearest whole number. So I'm either going to leave this 87 or I'm going to bump it up to 88. That depends on the number behind it. If this is 5 or above, then I make it an 88. If it's below 5, then I leave it 87. Because it's above 5, I'm going to make this an 88. So round to the nearest foot, the tow rope goes out 88 feet. Now it says, suppose the tow rope, so now this is at 300, because it says the tow rope is 300, so my C is 300. I'm going to write that right over here. My C is 300, because that's what it tells me, that my tow rope is represented by C. And the parasailor is 200 feet above the water, so my B is, here's the water, he's 200 feet above the water, so my B is 200. It says, what's the distance behind the boat? So what I don't know is my A. It doesn't tell me that. It tells me my C and it tells me my B. So now if I wrote this, again, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, I can fill in the stuff I know. I don't know my A. I know my B is now 200. And I know my C is 300. And if I continue solving that, well, 200 squared is 40,000. $300 squared is 90,000. And if I subtract, if I continue solving, subtract 40,000 from both sides, A squared then would be 90 minus 40,000 is 50,000. So then I would have to take the square root of that. And the square root of 50,000 is 200. And let's go to the nearest foot. It's 223.6. Because it's 0.6, I'm going to round up. So it's 224 feet is how far behind the boat it would be. Okay? Let's go on to the next page. Here is a building. We want to find how long this ladder is. Let's say that the fire department needs to come in and they need to save someone up here on this floor. They need to know how much ladder they're going to need to use in order to get up to the 4th floor. Okay? Let's actually do one together. Let's look down here. Let's see. Let's look over at, these are all examples. Let's look at A, right over here. It says Mr. Parsons wants to build a new banister. So he wants to put something up here to make this look nice. Okay, he wants to put a railing on there. That's what a banister is for the staircase. The rise of the stairs is 5 foot. Okay, so here's one of my lengths. The run is 12 foot. So those are my legs that make up the right angle. So now we need to find, well, how long does the banister have to be to go from this point to this point? So we're finding C. So here's let's make this A, let's make this B. And again, the Pythagorean theorem is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, I have an A. I know that my A is 5. My B is 12. And that will give me my C squared. Well, 5 squared, or 5 times 5, because that's what squared means, is I take it times itself. 5 times 5 is 25. 12 times 12 is 144. And when I take 25 plus 144, I get 169. Now, that is c squared. That doesn't mean that this is going to be 169 feet. That would be huge. This is c squared, so I have to unsquare it. In order to unsquare a number, I have to take the square root of it. So likewise, I have to take the square root of 169, and the square root of 169 is 13. So I now know that c, not c squared, but c, because I unsquared it, is 13 feet. So in order for this banister to go from here to here, it has to be 13 feet long. Okay? Let's look at the next page. Let's look at B on the next page. This is talking about the top of a circus tent. And it wants to know how tall is the top of the tent. Well, I can do the top, even though this is not a triangle, okay, it's a cone, but even though it's a cone, I can use the line down and a line over from the middle to make a perfect right triangle. So now, let me draw this triangle over here. Here's the top of the tent, and it says that one of my legs, to make my perfect right angle, because my perfect right angle is right here in this corner, so one of my legs is 50 feet. I don't know how tall this leg is, so I don't know what my B or my other leg. And it says that this part, which is my C, is 61 feet. Okay, so here's my A, here's my B, here's my C. So if I do the Pythagorean theorem, again it's A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I can fill in the information I know. Well, I know my A is 50. I don't know my B. That's what I'm trying to solve for, is how tall it is. So I don't know my B squared. And then my C squared I know is 61. And if I further solve this, if I take 50 squared, you get 2,500. If I take 61 squared, I get 3,721. And now I want to solve for B. I want to get this on a side by itself. In order to get that on a side by itself, I have to move anything on that side. So I'm going to subtract 2,500 from both sides. And if I take 3,721 minus 2,500, I get 1,221. But that's B squared. In order to unsquare it, because I just want B, not B squared, I have to take the square root of both sides. So B by itself is the square root of the square root of 1,221, which is this number right here. Okay? And it says round to the nearest whole number. So I'm either going to leave this 34 or I'm going to round up to 35. What helps me decide is the number directly behind it. The number directly behind it is a 9. Because it's a 9, I'm going to round up to 35. So the height of that circus tent, how tall it is 35 feet. Okay? I hope that does a good job of explaining how to use the Pythagorean theorem to you. If you have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.